As soccer takes center stage this summer, Comcast helps bring the experience home to America. As the exclusive Spanish-language home of the tournament in the U.S., Telemundo is set to present its most expansive coverage ever. 700 hours of programming, live on-site presence at all 104 matches. And with multi-view and real-time 4K, Xfinity will deliver the most innovative and immersive sports viewing experience for fans watching on Telemundo, Peacock, Fox, and FS1. Learn more at ComcastCorporation.com.
Here's your report.
Oh, thanks, Jane. I wish I could hire someone just like you.
Try LinkedIn Hiring Pro. It's more than a job board. It's like the recruiter you always wished you had. Hiring Pro uses real-time insights to match your role to LinkedIn's unique network of professionals and delivers a short list of best fit candidates. You'll spend less time sorting applicants and more time talking to the right people.
Let's do it. You're irreplaceable, Jane, but another you would be great.
Hire right the first time. Post your job for free on LinkedIn today at linkedin.com/quality.
This episode is brought to you by Accenture. When your advertising operations fall out of sync, everything else follows. Spotify and Accenture are working together to reinvent the rhythm of ad sales, using automation, analytics, and smarter workflows to simplify campaign delivery and access better data across the business. The result? Less time spent on operations, more time connecting brands with the moments and fandoms that matter most. Learn more at accenture.com/Spotify.
At REI Co-op, we've got the gear that makes camp easy. A tent that sets up in seconds. A chair you could fall asleep in. A cooler that keeps things chill. So you can get to the good stuff. Late night laughs, endless stars, and stories you'll tell again and again. REI Co-op. Camp solved. Shop in-store or at rei.com.
Morning decisions. How about a creamy mocha frappuccino drink? Or a sweet vanilla? Smooth caramel maybe? Or a white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Find Starbucks Frappuccino drinks wherever you buy your groceries.
Welcome to the Peak Performance Podcast. I'm Brad Young, and this show exists for one reason: to go deeper than the surface level fitness content flooding your feed. Each episode is a focused, research-backed, experience-tested conversation about what it actually takes to perform at your highest level across training, recovery, mindset, and the science shaping how we understand the human body. No fluff, no shortcuts, just the real work and the thinking behind it. Metabolic adaptation in the modern world, and a deep dive into how environmental stressors, food systems, and modern technology influence metabolism today, and the strategies high performers use to stay metabolically flexible in a rapidly changing world. When your metabolism has never faced a world like this one. I want you to sit with something for a moment before we get into the science. Your metabolism, the entire system by which your body converts fuel into energy and regulates its internal environment, was shaped by evolutionary pressures that have essentially nothing to do with the world you're currently living in. Your metabolic machinery was refined over hundreds of thousands of years to handle feast and famine cycles, physical labor, natural light patterns, seasonal temperature variation, and whole foods in their unprocessed forms. What it was absolutely not designed for is what you're actually dealing with every single day in 2026. Constant caloric availability, ultra-processed foods engineered to override satiety signaling, artificial light at 10 o'clock at night, disrupting your circadian hormonal cascade. Sedentary work demands requiring you to sit for 8 to 10 hours while your stress hormones run at a level your ancestors would only have experienced during acute physical danger. Electromagnetic noise, decision fatigue, social comparison pressure, sleep fragmentation in a food system that measures quality almost exclusively through the lens of calories and macronutrients rather than micronutrient density and metabolic signaling. This is the environment your metabolism is trying to navigate every single day. And understanding that mismatch is the beginning of understanding why metabolic dysfunction has become so widespread even among people who are genuinely trying to take care of themselves. This episode is about that mismatch and what to do about it. I've spent years studying metabolic health, working with physicians, researchers, and high performers across multiple domains and testing strategies in my own physiology. What I want to give you today is a clear eyed understanding of what the modern world is doing to your metabolic function, the mechanisms behind it, and the specific frameworks that the highest performing, metabolically resilient people I know are using to stay ahead of it. Let's build the foundation first. What metabolic flexibility actually means. The term metabolic flexibility gets used a lot in performance circles, but I want to make sure we're working from the same definition because the nuance matters. Metabolic flexibility is not just the ability to burn fat, it's the capacity of your cells to efficiently switch between fuel sources, primarily glucose and fatty acids, based on availability and demand. A metabolically flexible individual can access fat for fuel during low intensity activity and rest, shift into glucose utilization when intensity demands it, and return to fat oxidation during recovery without significant performance degradation or dysregulation of appetite and energy levels. A metabolically inflexible individual, by contrast, is what I describe as glucose dependent. They struggle to access fat stores efficiently, so their energy fluctuates with their blood sugar. They get hungry quickly, they feel fatigue between meals, they crash after high carbohydrate intake, and their performance in longer duration aerobic work suffers because they can't tap into the virtually unlimited fuel stores sitting right there in their body fat. Metabolic inflexibility is not just a nuisance, it's a performance limiter and a long-term health risk, and it is astonishingly common in people who appear healthy by conventional measures. The research on this is compelling. Studies using continuous glucose monitoring in otherwise healthy adults consistently show that even individuals with normal fasting blood, glucose, and hemoglobin A1C, the standard markers we use to define metabolic health, can exhibit significant glucose dysregulation in response to certain foods, timing patterns, and lifestyle inputs. This means the conventional medical model, which essentially declares you metabolically healthy until you meet the clinical threshold for prediabetes or type 2 diabetes, is missing a massive amount of the picture. High performers need to think about this at a much finer resolution. How environmental stressors disrupt metabolic function.
This episode is brought to you by Workday. Guessing is for game shows, not your business, especially when your margin for error is zero. Workday is the enterprise AI platform for HR, finance, and IT, with a deep understanding of your organization's context and guardrails. So every AI action is permission aware, giving you accuracy 24/7 and the ability to not just get work done, but get it done right. It's a new Workday.
If data management is slowing down your business, you need the Intuit ERP. If one entity is here, and one here, and one here, and one here, you need the Intuit ERP. If scaling your business feels like starting over, you need the Intuit ERP. Intuit Enterprise Suite is the AI-native ERP solution that consolidates, migrates, and automates, all in one place. Learn more at intuit.com/ERP.
This episode is brought to you by Tidy Cats, here to level up your litter game with their new Performance Plus lineup. Your home is your happy place, your cats, VIPs. So when it comes to the litter box, excellence isn't optional. Choose from products that specialize in max power clumping, low tracking, or odor fighting so advanced, stink won't see it coming. Tidy Cats Performance Plus. Mission mighty, keep it tidy. Shop now at tidycats.com.
You mind if we make one more stop before heading back? I need to run a Target.
100%. Let's RTT. You thinking of stuff for the dorm?
Yeah, my mom gave me some good tips on must-have essentials. We for sure need underbed storage, handheld iron for wrinkles, maybe even a mini Keurig for Mondays. Am I right?
All right, bet. Because I was already thinking about keeping my clothes looking fresh at college, so you better be sharing that.
Of course, man. Whatever I get on this run is yours too.
Twin.
But for real, let's go before they close.
Find everything you need for college at Target.
Let me walk you through the primary environmental inputs that are disrupting metabolic function in modern high performers, because understanding the mechanisms is what allows you to actually address them rather than just applying generic wellness advice. The first and probably most underappreciated factor is light exposure, specifically the disruption of circadian rhythm by artificial light at night, and the corresponding lack of natural bright light exposure during the day. Your metabolism is not a constant process. It is deeply rhythmic, governed by a circadian clock that regulates the timing of insulin sensitivity, cortisol release, fat oxidation, appetite hormone cycles, and thermogenesis. When you disrupt that clock, which artificial blue light at night absolutely does by suppressing melatonin and signaling your hypothalamus that it's still daytime, you don't just sleep worse. You alter the timing of every metabolic process downstream. Insulin sensitivity decreases. Late night cortisol stays elevated. Your appetitive hormones get dysregulated, pushing you toward higher calorie choices the following day. A single night of disrupted sleep measurably impairs glucose disposal the next morning. This is not trivial. It is a genuine metabolic stressor, and most people are experiencing it chronically. The second major environmental disruptor is thermal monotony. The fact that most of us spend the vast majority of our time in climate-controlled environments maintained at a narrow, comfortable temperature. Your body has a sophisticated metabolic response to cold exposure, activating brown adipose tissue, increasing metabolic rate, improving insulin sensitivity, and stimulating mitochondrial biogenesis. When you eliminate temperature variation from your life almost entirely, you eliminate a metabolic stimulus your body was designed to receive regularly. This is one of the reasons deliberate cold exposure has become such a compelling protocol for metabolically serious performers, not as a trend, but as a reintroduction of a natural environmental signal that modern life has removed. The modern food system engineering against your biology. I want to be direct about this because I think the food conversation in performance circles often stays too polite. The modern industrial food system is not designed to optimize your health or your performance. It is designed to maximize palatability, shelf life, and repeat consumption. Those goals are frequently in direct conflict with your metabolic health, and understanding that is not paranoia. It is a realistic assessment of the economic incentives that shape what's on most supermarket shelves and what's served in most restaurants. Ultra-processed foods, and I'm using the NOVA classification system here, not a loose colloquial definition, are formulated to hit what food scientists call the bliss point, the precise combination of fat, sugar, salt, and texture that maximizes consumption while bypassing the normal satiety signals your body uses to regulate intake. They do this by removing fiber, altering the food matrix, adding palatability-enhancing additives, and engineering foods that digest so rapidly they hit your bloodstream in a glucose spike that has almost no parallel in the whole food world. Chronic exposure to this pattern rewires your dopamine system, blunts your satiety signals, and creates a cycle of dysregulated appetite that is genuinely difficult to break through willpower alone. For high performers, the additional concern is micronutrient depletion. Caloric density without nutritional density is a metabolic problem that doesn't show up on a macronutrient tracking app. You can hit your protein and carbohydrate targets while being deficient in magnesium, zinc, vitamin D, vitamin K2, and a host of other micronutrients that are essential for mitochondrial function, hormonal health, sleep quality, and stress resilience. And this is a pattern I see constantly in high-performing people who are meticulous about their macros and almost completely blind to their micronutrient status. Performance suffers. They assume they need to train more or sleep more when the actual solution is to eat differently. Technology's role in metabolic disruption. The relationship between modern technology use and metabolic health is an area I find genuinely fascinating, partly because it's so counterintuitive. Most people think about technology and health through the lens of physical inactivity or screen time and poor posture. Those are real issues. But there's a deeper layer here that has to do with how constant digital stimulation affects your stress hormone axis, your sleep architecture, and by extension, your metabolic function. The chronic low-grade stress that most high performers experience from constant digital engagement, emails, notifications, social comparison, news consumption, decision fatigue, maintains cortisol at a level that is metabolically problematic over the long term. Cortisol in appropriate acute doses is an ally. It mobilizes fuel, sharpens focus, and prepares the body for performance. But chronically elevated cortisol drives fat storage, particularly in the visceral region. It impairs insulin sensitivity. It degrades sleep quality even when you're in bed for an adequate number of hours. It increases appetite for high-calorie foods.
Visible puts the ultimate wireless hack in the palm of your hand. With unlimited 5G wireless data and hotspot designed to keep you connected, powered by Verizon's 5G network. And no contract holding you back. Plans start at $25 a month, or get the premium Visible Plus Pro plan and save $10 on your first month when you use promo code HACK. Make the switch at Visible.com. Terms apply. See Visible.com for details.
And it suppresses the anabolic hormones, testosterone, growth hormone, IGF-1, that are essential for muscle maintenance, recovery, and metabolic rate. I started tracking my own cortisol awakening response, a morning saliva test that measures the sharp cortisol spike that occurs in the first 30 to 45 minutes after waking, about 2 years ago. What I found was that on days preceded by high evening screen time, particularly content consumption that was emotionally activating, my cortisol awakening response was measurably blunted and my perceived stress for the subsequent day was higher. The digital inputs of the previous night were shaping my hormonal environment the next morning. When I changed those inputs, phones off by 8:30, evening wind down without screens, the cortisol pattern normalized. That was a direct, measurable metabolic consequence of a behavioral change. That data changed the way I structure my evenings permanently. Strategies for metabolic flexibility, the protocols that actually work. Now let's get into the actionable layer, because understanding the problem without having a practical framework for addressing it serves no one. The strategies I'm going to walk you through are not theoretical. They're the ones I use, the ones I've tested extensively, and the ones that the metabolically healthiest, highest performing people I know have built into their lives consistently, not as rigid rules, but as organizing principles that they return to even when life gets complicated. The first and most foundational intervention is time-restricted eating, not intermittent fasting in the aggressive, prolonged calorie restriction sense, but a consistent daily eating window that aligns your food intake with your circadian biology. The research here is compelling and growing. Eating within a consistent 8 to 10 hour window, particularly when that window is anchored to daylight hours rather than extending late into the evening, improves insulin sensitivity, reduces postprandial glucose spikes, supports mitochondrial health, and appears to enhance metabolic flexibility independent of what you eat. I personally eat in a 9 to 10 hour window anchored to morning. My first meal is within about an hour of sunrise. My last is typically around 5:30 in the evening. This was one of the highest leverage single changes I've made to my metabolic health, and the continuous glucose monitoring data I've collected over the past 2 years is unambiguous about its impact. The second major protocol is structured carbohydrate periodization, matching carbohydrate intake to training demand rather than consuming a fixed daily amount. On high-intensity training days, carbohydrates are your friend. They fuel glycolytic work, support recovery, and replenish muscle glycogen. On low-intensity or rest days, pulling carbohydrates back and shifting toward higher fat intake trains your body to access fat oxidation pathways more efficiently. This periodic low carbohydrate exposure is one of the most effective ways to maintain and improve metabolic flexibility. And it's something that many athletes who train hard every day without varying their nutrition are completely missing. Mitochondrial health, the engine of metabolic performance. If I had to identify the single most important organelle for understanding metabolic performance in high-performing adults, it would be the mitochondria. So, without question, mitochondria are the cellular machinery that convert fuel into ATP, the energy currency your muscles, brain, and every other organ run on. Mitochondrial density, efficiency, and health determine your aerobic capacity, your cognitive endurance, your recovery rate, and your metabolic flexibility. Everything I've been describing in this episode ultimately comes down to mitochondrial function at the cellular level. The modern lifestyle is actively hostile to mitochondrial health in ways most people don't appreciate. Chronic low-grade inflammation, driven by ultra-processed food, sleep disruption, sedentary behavior, and environmental toxin exposure, damages mitochondrial membranes and impairs their function. Caloric excess without compensating physical demand reduces mitochondrial density through a process called mitochondrial fission. Essentially, the cell breaks up dysfunctional mitochondria rather than maintaining and renewing them. And chronic stress, as I discussed earlier, creates an oxidative environment that is directly toxic to mitochondrial integrity over time. The interventions that most reliably support mitochondrial health in the scientific literature are regular aerobic exercise, particularly in the moderate intensity zone where fat oxidation is the primary fuel source, because it's the most potent stimulus for mitochondrial biogenesis that we know of. Cold exposure, which appears to activate PGC1 alpha, the master regulator of mitochondrial production. Time-restricted eating, which induces a mild metabolic stress that stimulates mitochondrial quality control. An adequate intake of the micronutrients that serve as cofactors in the mitochondrial electron transport chain, particularly CoQ10, magnesium, B vitamins, and iron. Get those inputs right, and you are building a metabolic engine that can handle extraordinary demands. Glucose monitoring as a performance tool, not just a medical device. I want to dedicate a section to continuous glucose monitoring because I think it represents one of the most significant practical tools available to performance-focused individuals right now, and it's still massively underutilized outside of the diabetic and pre-diabetic population. A continuous glucose monitor is a small sensor typically worn on the back of the upper arm that measures your interstitial glucose every few minutes and streams that data to your phone. For a metabolically healthy person, using it as a performance tool rather than a clinical management tool, it provides something genuinely priceless. Real-time feedback on how your individual body is responding to food, sleep, stress, exercise, and every other input in your life. The reason this matters so much is the extraordinary inter-individual variability in glucose response that research consistently documents. Two people can eat the exact same meal, same ingredients, same macros, same timing, and have dramatically different glucose responses. One person gets a modest, controlled rise and return to baseline. The other gets a significant spike that takes hours to normalize. The difference is driven by factors including gut microbiome composition, insulin sensitivity, timing relative to recent exercise, sleep quality the previous night, stress levels, and dozens of other individual variables. No generic nutrition advice can capture that level of nuance. Your own glucose data can. I wore a continuous glucose monitor for 4 months as an extended self-experiment, and the information I collected fundamentally changed my approach to several areas of my nutrition and recovery. I discovered that my glucose response to white rice was far more moderate than my response to whole grain bread, the opposite of what conventional nutrition guidance would predict. I found that a 15-minute walk after any large meal completely blunted glucose spikes that would otherwise have been quite significant. And I found that poor sleep the night before substantially impaired my glucose disposal the following day in ways that were immediately visible in my real-time data. All of those insights were invisible to me before monitoring. None of them required a medical diagnosis. They just required attention to my own physiology. Metabolic flexibility across the lifespan. Why this becomes more critical with age.
Experience a membership that backs your business journey with American Express Business Platinum. Earn 5 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels booked on AmexTravel.com. Plus, apply to find out your welcome offer, which could be as high as 300,000 membership rewards points. American Express Business Platinum. There's nothing like it. Terms apply. Welcome offers vary, and you may not be eligible for an offer. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum.
Choice Hotels get you more of what you value. Here's a little tune to help you remember. Same drive, different day. Don't you wish you were getting away? pack your bags and come on through. Texas, Ohio, Alaska, we're up there too. Comfort Inn, it's calling your name. Save on the stay. Oh, and free waffles are yours to claim. Well, I hope you like my little song. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
Need a laptop that's built to perform and designed to last all day? Select Windows 11 PCs starting at $499.99 are now at Best Buy. Learn more at bestbuy.com. Best Buy. Imagine that.
I want to address something that I think gets too little attention in performance conversations that focus primarily on young athletes. The reality that maintaining metabolic flexibility becomes dramatically more important and more challenging as you age. The physiological changes associated with aging, declining muscle mass, reduced insulin sensitivity, shifts in hormonal profiles, decreased mitochondrial density, and changes in gut microbiome composition all move in the direction of reduced metabolic flexibility if they're not actively countered. This is not inevitable, but it is the default trajectory if you're not deliberately working against it. The most important counter-intervention is muscle mass preservation. Skeletal muscle is the primary tissue responsible for glucose disposal. It's where the vast majority of the carbohydrates you eat are stored and utilized. More muscle mass means greater glucose disposal capacity, better insulin sensitivity, and a higher resting metabolic rate. Loss of muscle mass, sarcopenia, which begins measurably in most people in their 30s and accelerates significantly without resistance training, is one of the most significant metabolic risk factors of aging. If you are a high performer in your 30s, 40s, or beyond, and you are not prioritizing resistance training alongside your endurance and performance work, you are leaving one of the most important metabolic levers completely unpulled. Hormonal optimization is the other side of this equation. Declining testosterone in men and the hormonal shifts of perimenopause and menopause in women both have significant metabolic consequences that go well beyond libido and body composition. Thyroid function, growth hormone secretion, and cortisol regulation all shift with age in ways that influence metabolic rate and flexibility. I'm not advocating pharmaceutical intervention here for the general high-performing adult. That's a conversation between you and a knowledgeable physician. What I am saying is that if you are taking metabolic health seriously as a performance issue, understanding your hormonal landscape through appropriate testing is essential information, not optional detail. The high performer's metabolic stack building, a sustainable system. Let me synthesize everything in this episode into a practical framework, what I call the high performer's metabolic stack. This is not a rigid prescription. It's a set of organizing principles and priority ordered interventions that the metabolically healthiest, highest performing people I know have in common. You don't need to implement all of them at once, but understanding the full picture allows you to make intelligent decisions about where to start and how to layer in additional inputs over time. The foundation is what I call metabolic hygiene, the non-negotiable basics that have to be in place before any other intervention will work optimally. That means consistent sleep timing and adequate sleep duration because no nutritional or supplementation strategy compensates for chronic sleep disruption. It means managing light exposure, bright natural light in the morning, dimmed and red-shifted light in the evening. It means moving your body every day, not necessarily hard training, but regular movement throughout the day that keeps your glucose utilization pathways active and prevents the insulin resistance that accumulates with prolonged sitting. These are the foundation. Everything else is built on top of them. On top of that foundation, you layer your nutrition strategy, time-restricted eating, carbohydrate periodization, micronutrient attention, and whole food prioritization. Then your exercise programming, specifically ensuring that you have adequate aerobic zone 2 training for mitochondrial development, adequate resistance training for muscle mass and insulin sensitivity, and adequate recovery to allow those adaptations to consolidate. Then your monitoring layer, whether that's continuous glucose monitoring, HRV tracking, regular blood work, or some combination. And finally, the refinement layer, using the data from your monitoring to personalize and optimize the lower layers based on your individual response. That is the full stack. Build from the bottom up, refine from the top down, and give each layer time to show its effects before you add the next. Metabolic adaptation in the modern world. We've covered a lot of ground in this episode, and I want to take a moment to bring it back to the core message before we close. Your metabolism is not a fixed system. It is a remarkably adaptive, responsive, dynamic network of processes that is continuously shaped by the inputs you give it. The modern world provides inputs that your metabolic system was simply not designed to handle. And the result for most people is a slow drift toward inflexibility, dysregulation, and diminished performance. That is the bad news. The good news is that the same adaptability that makes your metabolism vulnerable to modern stressors also makes it highly responsive to intelligent intervention. The strategies we've covered today, circadian alignment, time-restricted eating, carbohydrate periodization, resistance training, mitochondrial support, monitoring, and the reduction of chronic low-grade stressors all work with your biology rather than against it. They are not extreme. They do not require perfect adherence. They require understanding the principles and building habits that move you consistently in the right direction. That is enough. Done consistently over months and years, it is more than enough. Thank you for being here for episode 2. In the next episode, we're going to move out of the physiological domain and into something I find equally fascinating and equally underserved in the performance conversation. That's about the psychology of staying power. Not motivation, not willpower, but the deep, durable, identity-level mental architecture that allows elite performers to sustain commitment and progress for years and decades. Not just weeks. The science here is rich. The practical implications are significant, and I have a lot to say. I'll see you in the next episode.